it is outrageous when we're being told that we can't scrap the two-child welfare cap, we can't increase funding for the NHS, but apparently we can throw tens of millions of pounds more at the Royals.
Can I start by asking for you both, Graham, beginning with you, for your reaction to today's news of this pay rise for the royal family?
Well, we had a bit of a preview of this a few months back. It is outrageous when we're being told that we can't scrap the two-child welfare cap, we can't increase funding for the NHS, but apparently we can throw tens of millions of pounds more at the Royals. Now they're heavily spinning this, suggesting that this is going to help fix Buckingham Palace, complete the refurbishment, but at the same time suggesting that's all on time and on budget, and we've already massively increased the grant for that purpose anyway. So it's only going up because of the weird mechanism that was introduced in 2011, where it continues to go up regardless of need, because of it being pegged to Crown Estate profits. It makes no sense, and it needs to be scrapped, and we need to reduce it right down to a few million for the Office of Head of State, and that's it.
An outrageous amount of money, says Graham. Charlotte, what's your take on this?
Well, they actually did freeze it at 86.3 for 3 years, and it is going up. But that, the restoration of Buckingham Palace is really important. It's a huge national landmark. It's a huge tourist attraction. It loses all of its magic if it's not associated really with a member of the royal family. So it's important that there's a royal living there, and that it's the base for our monarch, and it's a real national emblem for our country. It's I just can't imagine a world in which we allowed that to go to the wayside.
But that's not why it's going up. It's going up because it's pegged to the Crown Estate profits, and if the Crown Estate profits continue to rise, the grant will continue to rise. As I said, they increased the grant a few years ago in order to pay for the refurbishment. They're saying it's all on time and on budget. So why are they now using that as an excuse for this additional increase? No one is arguing that we should allow Buckingham Palace to fall down. There's actually no reason why it needs to have a royal living there. I don't think any of them do really spend any time there anymore. Tower of London is far more popular, doesn't come begging for huge grants from the government, and they haven't lived there for centuries.
Charlotte, the optics of this are particularly worrying for many at a time of, conversations around the number of families living in poverty across the UK. To hear millions of pounds being given to the royal family is potentially kind of an optical issue, is it not, Charlotte? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, the royal family are incredibly aware of optics, and of course that's why they've stripped the royal family down to its bare bones, and it's now a sort of skeleton royal family, and many royals, are no longer on the balcony every year. And, there was a huge £110 million windfall, which Charles has waived and, suggested it goes to the wider public good. Meanwhile, William, the new Prince of Wales, is working really hard to, address homelessness on his estates, and he's got numerous houses already in operation for homelessness and more planned, up to 200 planned. They are aware, they're obviously aware that they can't be seen to be spending too much money, and they've stripped everything right back to its bare bones.
But it's not, the thing is, we're shrinking the number of royals, and it's not really being done deliberately. It's simply people who are either no longer palatable to the public, or they've died. I mean, there's no conscious effort to strip it back. But why is the cost going up and up and up when the number of royals we have is going down and down and down? And the idea that William works hard is a fiction. I mean, I've done the sums. I've looked at his diary. He doesn't work hard. The Duchy of Cornwall, which is also a state asset along with the Crown Estate, is paying him £23 million this year. And he's now declining to tell us what tax he's paying, which is something which even his father didn't do. So, the optics isn't really the issue. This is abuse of public office, abuse of public money, and it needs to stop.
Graham, there were many people.
The idea that they don't work hard.
That's the point I was going to go to. So, please, Charlotte, over to you.
So it's just, two members of the royal family have cancer and they're still carrying on with their royal duties. Charles has only done 100 fewer engagements, since having this year, and he's got cancer.
He hardly did any last year. I mean, they don't do it very much. You only have to go through the court circular, add it up, adds up to a few weeks or a few months, depending on which royal it is. Kate typically does the full-time equivalent of around 3 weeks last year. This is before she was unwell. I totally accept that two of them have cancer, but they don't work hard even when they're fit and healthy. So the notion that they are out there busy, campaigning for causes or helping other people when we are throwing hundreds of millions of pounds, because the full cost is more than £345 million, plus the cost of the coronation, plus the cost of the Jubilee the year before that, and the funeral and all the rest of it. This is huge amounts of money being thrown at this one family when we can't pay for welfare for children, and when we're not putting extra money into beds for hospitals and for cancer treatment for people who are missing their appointments. I mean, it's an outrage.
I know there are many people that will be listening to this. Apologies, Charlotte. Just hold that thought for a moment. Many people listening to this who will agree and disagree on both sides of what they're hearing. And Charlotte, just keen to speak to the opinion of the readers of the Mail on Sunday, of the sorts of people that talk to you about their thoughts about the royal family, as Graham puts it, not actually working that hard.
I think people think they do work hard. I think my readers of the Mail on Sunday are readers, people who have met a member of the royal family, especially the Queen while she was alive, the late Queen. I mean, it changes their whole life. It's a story they dine out on for their whole life. People love the royal family. I think they think it's good value to pay around roughly about £1 per head. Some people say it's 77p. Some people say it's £1.29. I mean, for me, that's good value. If you have, these people going out representing our country, using soft power, also on an individual basis. Some of our readers write in to say that they shook hands with King Charles, and it's the best thing that's ever happened in their life. It's actually quite snobby.
It has a fan base.
Up at people that think that way.
No one is doing that. It has a fan base, and I'm sure a lot of that fan base will read the Daily Mail, but that doesn't change the fact that they simply don't do a lot. The hours simply don't show up in the court circular. They pad it out with private meetings in order to make it look more than it really is. And in terms of how popular it is, the popularity has dropped sharply. It's down to anywhere from 50 to 60%, depending on which poll you're looking at. And most people the vast majority of people weren't that excited by the coronation. 9% by one poll, YouGov, and another poll putting it at 15%. People are just not that excited. And whether they're excited or not, £345 million, which is a closer estimate to the true cost of the monarchy every year, is, you can spend that on 13,000 new nurses or teachers. And the idea that we spend it on one billionaire, allowing him to dodge inheritance tax, allowing William to not pay the full rate of income tax and then hide what he is paying, this is not okay. And we wouldn't tolerate it with politicians. And so we shouldn't tolerate it with our head of state and his eldest son.
Graham, that is an opinion that I would imagine there are some listeners nodding along to. But there are many people for whom the royal family holds a very special place in this country's culture and tradition. You just have to think about conversations around the Olympics with the Games in Paris underway, and reflecting on London 2012 and that opening ceremony with the Queen still being something that people talk about, still being something that feels very special to many people in this country. Why are you so opposed to that?
The opening ceremony, fine, but there are millions of people in this country, and millions of people don't think that. Millions of people don't really think much about them at all. Most people are fairly indifferent one way or the other. So the idea that they have this hold on the public imagination, I think, is simply not borne out by the evidence. But there are millions of people, increasing numbers of people, up to a third now, who want to see the back of it. A lot of people very concerned by how much it costs. A lot of people upset by the way they behave. And I think that certainly it's the case that Charles did not hold on to the sort of affection and support that his mother had. And this is an institution that is on its way out. It's going to take a while, but it is not going to survive in the long term.
Charlotte, what do you make of that? Because there are many people for whom the death of the late Queen and the new King and Queen shifted their view on things, shifted how much they felt this was a royal family that reflected them, that they felt there was some sense of wanting them to stay in place. How do you respond to the point Graham makes about that kind of shift in cultural opinion towards the royal family?
I think it's true to say that, of course, the Queen was this incredible symbol, and she was on the throne for so long, and it took a lot of adjusting when she died. But a lot of people still have a lot of affection for King Charles and for Princess Anne, who does a huge number of engagements, even though she's been very recently concussed, and who is, of course, the late Queen's daughter. People have a huge amount of affection for her. And also, I think people are excited for a future in which Prince William steps up, Princess Diana's son. hopefully in the distant future, and they will have a whole renewed affection for him, and he will modernise the modern family. And I think people will be quite surprised by in the future what Prince William does to keep the royal family going and give it some longevity.
We've been told for the last 30 years that Charles is going to modernise the family. And last year in May, we saw the most arcane ceremony, which was entirely pointless, estimated to cost anything from 150 to 250 million pounds of taxpayers' money in the middle of a cost of living crisis. With oil being dabbed on him under a cloak and all sorts of trinkets and baubles being handed to him. It had made no sense to most people, which is why most people weren't particularly interested. The idea that William, who is absolutely a chip off the old block, is going to modernise beyond withdrawing more from the media game and trying to control the image more than perhaps his father has gone away with. It simply isn't credible, and people are not excited by William. Yes, they have a fan club, I can see that, but if you see the crowds that are trooping the colour, they're pretty small compared to what they used to be a decade or two ago. And there is now, of course, a burgeoning and rapidly growing Republican movement, which is attracting a lot more attention than it's ever done before. And people are starting to see the thing as a serious critical issue to talk about, rather than simply accepting or believing that the country is excited by them, which they simply aren't. The evidence isn't there.
Okay.
I think by saying the coronation is pointless, you've missed the point of the coronation. The whole point is it's a celebration of a huge, amazing British history.
And no, it's not. It's a celebration of one institution. It's a celebration of one person getting the job without being given a mandate. It's a celebration of an institution which is among the most secretive in the country, one of the most corrupt in the country, which doesn't stand up to the actual values that we believe in.
Let's just allow Charlotte to finish. Graham, let's just pause for a moment and allow Charlotte just to finish that point, please.
I just think you're missing the point about, the nation, many people in the nation want a bit of joy in their lives, and the royal family bring them a bit of joy. And the coronation was an incredibly special, and for some people who are religious, it was a very poignant moment and a celebration of our history and a recognition of our fascinating history that stretches back 900 years with monarchy.
But it's just a small minority.
Just a moment, please, Graham.
Marketing meeting in a middle management office. There is a bit of mysticism about the royal family, and that some people, find quite joyful and celebrate and find very interesting.
Okay, final word to you, Graham.
Mysticism. It is not mysticism. It's secrecy, which is not appropriate, and it's not about joy and whatever. Most people were not interested in the coronation, as the polls bore out. Now, if you like Charles and if you like William and if you're excited by these people, what I would say is vote for them when we have an election for head of state. See how they stand up to that kind of challenge and scrutiny. And if they win, fine, they can be head of state until the next election. But what you're saying is that you want to hold on to something which only really excites a small minority of people, that you want this person to be king because you like them. What you can't really do as in a democratic society is say that no one else has a chance to choose someone else. And the polling simply doesn't support the idea that most people are excited or that they are connected to it in any deep and meaningful way. It is simply a...
Oh, Graham, we seem to have lost you. Yeah, we've dropped the
polling suggests that
I think we will have to leave it there, I'm afraid. I think there's one clear thing to take from the discussion, a really interesting discussion with Graham Smith from the anti-monarchy group Republic and the Mail on Sunday's Charlotte Griffiths. If there's one thing to take from it, it's that I don't think they're ever going to be on the same page about the royal pay rise. But nonetheless, a really interesting discussion.